Hello, my name is Mitchell Webster, and we'll be talking about professional teaching standards. My objectives throughout this presentation is to give you a look into the InTask and the National Council of Social Studies, or NCSS for short. We'll see how they share similarities between the two, and also talk about how they explain collaboration in a professional setting, along with touching on some data-driven points within the world of education. In InTask, which is the Model Core Teaching Standards and Learning Progressions for Teaching, there are four main points: the learner and learning, content knowledge, instructional practice, and professional responsibility. Within those main points, there's a total of 10 standard/progressions with around 2 standards for each main point. As I chose the social studies path, I chose to work with the National Council Social Studies, or NCSS for short. In NCSS, there are 5 standards. You have content knowledge, application of content through planning, design and implementation of instruction and assessment, social studies, learners and learning, professional responsibility, and informed actions. Within these standards, there are elements that help break down what is expected in these standards. Moving on to common themes, the first common theme I found was between the standard of instruction in InTask and the design and assess standard of the NCSS. There's an emphasis of planning using your content knowledge, as both explain that we need to have multiple types of assessment, like formative versus summative, or speaking versus writing to reach out to all of our students. One of the quotes that I found connects this idea is by Gillis. Gillis explains that social studies textbooks, the core of instruction constituting more than 75% of instructional material used, have been found to be inconsiderate and complex. Our job as educators is to look into this content knowledge of the textbook and plan our best to reach out to our students so they can understand these dense, complex texts. This leads me into the correlation that NCSS explains that they use assessment data to guide their future lessons and/or units. This way we can close the gaps that students might have within the previous lessons without reteaching them. We adapt our planning. In InTask, however, it's more about preparation and accommodations of assessment. They want to prepare our students for the best assessment, so the students feel prepared. Students, though, can sometimes not show their best understanding in some way, so NCSS goes into explaining the portion of reaching your students in multiple ways and providing accommodations to students to succeed. Moving on to common theme number 2, the second common theme I saw was in learning environments. They both talk about how we need to prepare our lessons in classroom in mind of our students. Creating that environment for your students is going to put their best foot forward in feeling comfortable in creating a community for the class. A quote I found goes into depth about how constructivist learning environments can develop positive attitudes. In this quote that I found by Dunder, in other terms, it explains that creating a classroom to be more enjoyable, you might have a better chance of having hard work getting achieved by your students. This leads me into the correlation. The correlation between the learning environments within InTask and NCSS is very interesting. InTask puts the learning and learners as the first main point. They want an established classroom and community before getting into the content knowledge and the way we instruct as educators. NCSS, however, puts the standards of learning and the learner after the design, instruction, and assessment. They want us getting to the foundation of content first and making sure we have a foundation within our lessons and units. Once you have that foundation, then you can adapt to the needs of the students and reach out to the classroom individually, as well as the community and environment of the class. Now we'll move on to collaboration. In InTask, they talk about collaboration in Standard 10. It goes on to explain that the collaboration cannot be just between students. Teachers need to collaborate with each other to make cohesive classes. As well, teachers need to be a part of collaboration with their students, since the teachers are also part of the community. NCSS, however, talks about collaboration in Standard 5. The teacher's goal in NCSS is to look within, with research, own reflection, theory, to set guidelines on how they want to teach collaboration. Teachers will then light the fire of the students' collaboration with each other and help guide the conversations from there. Moving along to instruction, you can find the instruction guidelines under Standard 8 in InTask. In InTask, they want you to reach out to the students with a wide variety of techniques to have a deeper understanding of the content knowledge. NCSS, however, can be found in Standard 3, where they talk about more data-driven ways to approach things when it comes to decision making. They will then use that data to make a more meaningful next steps for the students to understand. Staying on the topic of data, data seems to be the new norm nowadays in schools. Schools are starting to implement the use of data in instruction. Kahoot is a great application that schools use for data. On top of that, it's a great way to get students to interact with each other and create a little competition in the classroom. Kahoot actually did a survey with teachers that found that 3 out of 4 teachers define data-driven instruction and intervention as a top trend that they saw in their school districts in 2018. This trend gained significant pace compared to the same time last year, where only 28% of surveyed teachers agreed that increased understanding of data was a top trend in their district. After the Kahoot is over, the great thing about it is if students are using their name, you can see the percentage of questions they got correct. Or on the flip side of that, you can see common missed questions, so you can go review that topic where you need see fit. Last but not least, we'll talk about expectations within InTask. Expectations in InTask has for the professional standards include ongoing learning, learning experiences, colleague collaboration, community/connection, reflection, and role model. 10A is talking about how the teacher needs to take responsibility for their role with the colleagues and for their students. They need to give feedback and analyze to build best practices for students. 10B is that teachers are expected to work with colleagues to plan and prepare for a diverse range of learners. 10C is making sure that staff as a whole share the same ideas and understandings of what is expected of them and to create a community within themselves for a school culture. 10D goes further into 10B, and not only does teachers need to collaborate with other staff, but they also need to connect with students outside of the community to build a better support system. 10E and F is also making sure that teachers understand that we need to continuously reflect within ourselves and others to enhance student learning and well-being, making those connections strong within the school with all staff and students. 10G is about using strategies like technology to reach all students and make them engaged in the work that we do. 10H is using research to back up the instruction or philosophies. 10I and K are touching on the leadership roles within the community and school. To have a good role model presence, whether you are teaching or even on social media. 10J is touching on the role model aspect since it explains that we need to be our students' advocates. Just a recap of what we learned today that the difference between InTask and the National Council of Social Studies, or the NCSS, we were able to talk about some common themes between the two, mainly the standard of instruction and InTask with the design and assessment standard of NCSS, along with their learning environments of each one, and kind of correlate how each theme fit with each other between InTask and NCSS. We were also able to talk about the collaboration and the data-driven instruction, along with how data is kind of driving the new norm now in schools. And finally, we talked about the expectations between the InTask and kind of how each one works together to create those professional standards. I appreciate you taking the time to listen. Again, my name is Mitchell Webster. Thank you.